My name is Geneva Rourke. I'm 82 years old, and last night, my daughter tried to have me killed. I wish I could tell you I'm speaking metaphorically, some petty emotional betrayal like being forgotten at Thanksgiving or denied a birthday call. But no. I mean it exactly as it sounds. I sat in my rocking chair, sipping chamomile tea, when a man crept in through my kitchen window with a knife duct-taped to his wrist. He didn't think I was awake. Didn't know the lights were off because my migraine was kicking up again, not because I'd gone to bed. He didn't expect the old woman with brittle knees and clouded eyes to swing a fireplace poker like she was 35 again. And he certainly didn't expect me to recognize the tattoo behind his ear. I'd seen it before. In a photo on my daughter's phone. It was the same man who had come to fix her deck 2 summers ago. Said he used to be a Marine. Said he could handle things quietly if needed. And now here he was, in my kitchen, in the house I built with my late husband brick by blessed brick, sent to kill me. When he fell, clutching his bleeding arm, I didn't scream. I didn't call the police. I just stared at him and whispered, "Who sent you?" He didn't answer. Just spat blood and groaned. But I already knew. It was Ellie, my daughter. The same daughter who used to braid my hair when my arthritis got too bad. The same daughter who sobbed in my arms the day her high school sweetheart married someone else. The same daughter who buried her father with shaking hands and demanded to see the will before we even left the cemetery. And when I told her I wasn't ready, when I said the house, the land, the savings, all of it would be divided when the time was right, something in her face changed. Like a switch flipped. The kindness dried up, and the hunger took over. She wanted control. Wanted it all. And when I didn't give it, she decided to take it. I dragged that man by his collar, bleeding and half-conscious, out onto the porch. My neighbors live too far down the road to hear anything, and I've long since stopped trusting 911 to arrive before a person's final breath. I tied him to the iron railing, locked the door behind me, and stood shaking in my living room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, hand trembling on the rotary phone, knowing that if I made the wrong move next, I wouldn't live to see tomorrow. Because if Ellie was bold enough to send someone once, she'd send another. And that's when I made a decision. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't be Geneva Rourke, the nice old lady with cookies and Sunday hats, anymore. If my own flesh and blood wanted a war, then she would have to see who she was really dealing with. But where does a woman my age go, when even her daughter wants her dead? I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my husband's old leather chair, gripping a mug of cold tea, replaying every moment of Ellie's descent into someone I no longer recognized. The girl I raised, the one I stayed up nights rocking through fevers and bad dreams, had turned into a stranger with polished claws and a hollow heart. I stared at the photo above the fireplace. Me, Franklin, and Ellie on her 5th birthday. Her frosting-smeared grin. His strong hand wrapped around her shoulders. My smile so full of pride. That version of us was gone. Buried with Franklin. Or maybe it died long before, and I'd been too stubborn to admit it. At dawn, I packed a bag. Just the essentials, my medicine, 2 changes of clothes, some cash, and a worn copy of Franklin's will, tucked in the side of my knitting basket. That document was the reason I was still alive. Or almost not. You see, the house was in both our names, but the rest? The stocks, the land, the small business shares, even the gold coins Franklin inherited from his father, it was all under my control until I passed. And Ellie knew it. When Franklin died of a stroke last year, Ellie cried like her world had ended. But behind the tears, I saw something sharp, something greedy. She started asking questions. About money. About titles. About how soon things could be settled. When I told her I'd need time before reading the will, she said, "You're not getting any younger, Mom." She said it like a joke, but her eyes didn't smile. By spring, she was visiting less and calling only when she wanted to talk numbers. When I asked her about her husband, Timothy, he'd vanished. Not one mention in months. Later, I'd learned she divorced him quietly, claimed everything, and even took his dog. She was getting bolder, colder. I drove away from the house just after sunrise, watching it shrink in the rearview mirror. My heart broke. That home was my life. I planted every bush in that garden. Franklin built that porch swing for our anniversary. Ellie learned to ride her bike down that gravel driveway. But it wasn't safe anymore. Not when someone knew how to slip the locks. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. What would I say? My daughter might have sent a hitman, and I hit him first? No proof. No confession. No time. I needed to think smarter. I drove 2 towns over to stay with my old friend Martha. We'd met at a quilting club years ago, before Franklin got sick. She lived alone now, in a modest blue cottage filled with lemon-scented candles and memories of a husband who died too young. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. Just pulled me in and wrapped me in the kind of hug only another old woman could give, tight enough to squeeze your pain, gentle enough to let you fall apart. Over breakfast, I finally told her everything, about the man in the kitchen, the will, and Ellie's slow spiral into something monstrous. Martha didn't gasp. She didn't interrupt. She just placed a wrinkled hand over mine and said, "Geneva, sometimes we birth the snake that later bites us." It stung. But it was true. "I'm not safe," I whispered. "But I can't just hand it over, Martha." Franklin trusted me. He wanted Ellie to earn it, not steal it, not kill for it. "Then we need a plan," she said calmly, reaching for her reading glasses. "And we need to be quiet. Let her think she's won for now." That was the beginning of me letting go of fear, and stepping into the woman I forgot I used to be. Martha helped me contact someone, an old friend of her late husband's, a man named Curtis Hollander, now retired from a long career in private investigation. He owed Martha a favor, she said. And within 2 days, he was sitting at her kitchen table, sipping bitter black coffee and asking me to describe the man who came through my window. I described the tattoo, the shape of his boots, his voice. Curtis scribbled notes with the same calm precision he once used tracking down corporate frauds and runaway spouses. "I'll find him," he said. "And if I do and it leads back to her, you'll have what you need. Proof." Finally, something more than a gut feeling. I spent those nights helping Martha with her garden, pretending to be just another widow passing time. But inside, I was changing. Every morning, I called Franklin's lawyer and arranged for quiet transfers, little things. Moving accounts, setting limits, securing backups. No sudden moves, just steps in the shadows. But on the 5th morning, Martha rushed into the kitchen holding a manila envelope with shaking hands. It had been left at her front door. No postage, no name. Inside was a single photo of me, asleep, in her guest room, and scribbled in thick black ink on the back, "You can run, Geneva, but I'll always know where you are." My hands shook so badly I couldn't hold the photo. Martha had to take it from me before I tore it in half. I stared at her face, pale, her lips trembling, and realized for the first time that I wasn't just putting myself in danger anymore. I was dragging others into it. "Pack your things," I whispered. "I can't stay here. She's watching." Martha protested, of course. Said we could install cameras, call the sheriff, even buy a firearm. But I'd lived too long and seen too much to believe this was something law enforcement could fix. Ellie wasn't a teenager vandalizing mailboxes. She had crossed into a world of shadows, of paid threats, surveillance, and quiet violence. She wanted that will. And until she had it, she would keep hunting me. "I'm going underground," I said. "Just for a while." Curtis didn't look surprised when I called him. I figured something like this would happen, he said. You've rattled her. That photo. It's a warning, but also a mistake. Amateurs taunt. Professionals stay quiet. What do I do now? Let me dig, he said. And you disappear. He made some calls, contacts from back when he still wore a badge and busted money laundering rings across the state. One of them, a woman named Dorothy who ran a halfway house for battered women and war veterans, agreed to take me in, no questions asked. She lived in a church-converted home in the hills outside Belford, a town so small it barely appeared on the map. I arrived just before sunset. The place smelled like old cedar and strong coffee. Dorothy was tall, with deep brown skin and silver dreadlocks. Her voice was calm but fierce. You stay as long as you need, she said, squeezing my shoulder. I've had congressmen's wives and runaways stay here. Your story's safe. I nodded, grateful, but inside, my bones ached with betrayal. My daughter wanted me dead. The same girl I nursed through scarlet fever. The same one I worked double shifts for, just to pay for ballet lessons she gave up 2 months later. The same one I taught how to make my mother's apple crumble. And now, she had become my hunter. Over the next few days, I stayed quiet. I helped cook meals with the other women. I crocheted in the evenings. I prayed, something I hadn't done properly in years. And I waited for Curtis to call. When he finally did, I was sitting on the porch, watching fog roll in over the hills. I found him, he said. The man who broke into your house. Name's Travis Cole. Ex-Marine. Served 2 tours, then started bouncing between private security gigs. Was discharged for unethical conduct. That's code for mercenary work. I swallowed hard. Does it tie to Ellie? Not directly, he said. But I found something better. He's scared. Got spooked after you fought back. Apparently, word in his circle is you're not just some sweet old woman. A bitter laugh escaped me. If only they knew. He's willing to talk, Curtis added. But he wants something in return. What? Immunity. Or at least some protection. He thinks your daughter might come after him next. So she wasn't just ruthless. She was reckless. That gave me an idea. What if I gave her what she wants? I asked quietly. Curtis was silent for a moment. Then, Geneva, what are you thinking? I give her a version of the will. One that looks real. One that makes her feel like she's won. And then… I didn't finish the sentence, because the rest of the plan hadn't formed yet, but I could feel it rising. I wasn't going to run forever. I had lived through war, widowhood, childbirth, and a broken hip. I had watched friends die, buried my husband with my own hands, and survived the kind of heartbreak that turns lesser women to stone. And now, my own daughter thought I'd just fold? No. This was my story. Not hers. Curtis agreed to help. Said he'd draw up a duplicate, legal-looking but entirely void. A decoy. Let her have her little victory, he said, while you move the real pieces into place. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. But the peace didn't last long. Because at sunrise, Dorothy shook me awake. You've got a visitor, she whispered. Who? She says, she's your daughter. My blood turned to ice. I sat up so fast my back cracked. She's here, I whispered. Dorothy nodded slowly, eyes sharp. She pulled up in a silver SUV, polished like a senator's car. Says she just wants to talk. My hands trembled against the blanket. How did she find me? Dorothy hesitated. Maybe the PI slipped up. Maybe she followed your trail. Doesn't matter now. You've got a choice. Meet her or disappear again. No, I said firmly, swallowing the knot in my throat.
I'll see her.
Dorothy didn't move.
Not alone, she said.
I won't be, I promised. Not this time. She led me to the back room of the house. Small, clean, with glass doors that opened to the porch. There was a mirror on one side, and I caught a glimpse of myself. The Geneva I saw wasn't weak. She wasn't frail. She looked like an old oak tree, scarred, bent, but rooted deep. I took a breath and stepped outside. Ellie was waiting for me by the garden steps, arms folded, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked like she was on her way to a real estate meeting, not confronting the mother she'd tried to have killed.
Mom, she said, voice sweet as syrup.
We need to talk. I said nothing, just stood there, watching her closely. She took a slow step forward. You just vanished. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I let out a small, bitter laugh. You're worried about you? She tilted her head. You're being dramatic.
No, Ellie.
Dramatic would have been calling the cops the moment your hitman crashed into my kitchen.
Dramatic would have been dying.
Her jaw tensed. I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't lie to me, I snapped.
Not here.
Not after everything I've done for you.
Silence. Then she smiled, a smile that chilled my spine. You always were too suspicious, too emotional. You tried to kill me, I said softly, over a piece of paper.
No, she replied calmly.
I tried to free myself from your control. She stepped forward, dropping the facade like a dirty napkin. I gave you my whole life, Mom. Watched you fawn over Dad. Took care of you after his stroke. I waited, and waited, and waited for my turn. But you just kept dragging it out, controlling everything, treating me like a child.
I'm not a child anymore.
No, I said. You're not. Children don't hire murderers. She rolled her eyes. You have no proof. My lips curled. That was her mistake. I don't need to argue with you, I said. I came out here because I wanted to look you in the eye one last time.
Because tomorrow, this will all be over.
Her face flickered. What's happening tomorrow? I smiled. Your inheritance. Her eyes widened, hungry, surprised, and a little suspicious. What do you mean? I signed the will over. You'll get the papers by morning. Everything will be in your name. Her breath caught. Seriously? I nodded. She blinked, trying to process it.
Why now? I'm tired, Ellie, I said.
You win. For the first time, she looked uncertain. She wasn't used to me folding. I turned to go, but she stopped me. Wait, she said. Do you hate me? I didn't turn around. I love the daughter I raised. The one who used to cry when her tooth fell out. The one who kissed my forehead on Christmas morning. But you, I don't know who you are. And then I walked inside. She didn't follow. Later that night, Curtis called. She bought it, he said. Travis confirmed it. She's already telling people the estate is hers. And we've got her voice on the phone, planning the hit. My heart cracked open.
So it's done.
Almost. Tomorrow, the DA gets the tapes. And you start a new life. I didn't speak for a long while. Then I asked, what happens if she runs? She won't. People like her don't run. They pose. They posture. They lie. But eventually, they break. I hung up and stood at the window. Outside, the wind was picking up. I watched the trees sway, the stars blink between clouds. It should have felt like justice. But all I felt was grief. Grief for the daughter I lost. grief for the future we could have had. But underneath it, a small flicker of peace. Because I had chosen to survive. I had chosen to fight.
And now,
I had chosen to let go. The next morning came dressed in quiet. The kind of quiet that settles just before a storm. I sat on the porch of Dorothy's cottage with a cup of black coffee between my palms. The hills were still misty, the sun just starting to rise over the treetops. Somewhere inside, Dorothy and Curtis were preparing the final handoff, copies of the forged will, the real one locked in a separate vault, and the voice recordings from Travis' confession. And my daughter. She was probably sipping champagne, thinking she had one. The funny thing is, I almost let her. There was a moment, after the attack, after the photo, after the confrontation, when I thought about just disappearing. Giving her what she wanted. Letting her have the money, the land, the legacy. Letting her rot in silence with the ghosts of what she stole. But that would have been too easy. Too small for what Franklin and I built. Because we didn't build this life to be buried under greed. We built it to last. For legacy. For dignity. And if Ellie wanted to rewrite our story, she would have to do it behind bars.
Curtis emerged from the house with a folder in hand and a nod.
It's done. Travis gave a full statement. The DA was shocked but not surprised. Says she'll be picked up today. I took the folder, opened it, and saw my daughter's signature beside a transcript of her deal with Travis. Her voice, cool, crisp, deadly, talking about handling it quietly and making sure the house looks like a robbery. That was the final nail. Curtis placed a hand on my shoulder. I know this hurts, he said, but you did the right thing. I nodded, eyes stinging. I just don't know how we got here. He was quiet for a while, then said, Evil doesn't start with a bang. It starts with entitlement, with the first lie, the first unchecked betrayal. Then one day, the child you raised is a stranger you fear. I looked away, tears falling freely now. She was my baby.
I know.
We drove into town after breakfast. Me, Curtis, and Dorothy. The sheriff's department had asked me to identify some documents, but I knew it was more than that. They wanted to see if I'd break down, if I'd change my mind. But I didn't, because by then, Ellie had already been arrested. She was pulled over in the middle of town, still in her silk blouse and pearls, just like always. They said she didn't cry, just asked for a lawyer. As if this was all business to her. When I saw her from the window of the sheriff's office, sitting in a cruiser, cuffed and silent, I didn't feel joy. I felt loss. A deep, gaping loss. But I also felt something else. Relief. Not because she was going to jail, but because the lie was over. The pretending. The wondering if I was just being paranoid. Now the truth had weight and teeth. 2 days later, the story hit local news. Wealthy daughter arrested for plotting mother's murder in inheritance scheme. They left out the details, of course. No one wants to imagine a child becoming a killer for money. But I knew. And the world would too. People from church started calling. Friends I hadn't heard from in years left flowers on my doorstep. Some offered pity. Others, whispers of, I never trusted her anyway. But what I needed most wasn't flowers or apologies. I needed time. Time to mourn the daughter I lost. Time to rebuild the life she tried to burn. Back at Dorothy's, I planted a new row of lavender near the edge of the porch. Franklin always loved the scent. Said it made the air feel like spring, no matter the season. Martha came to visit, bringing banana bread and a Bible passage she insisted I read aloud. What you meant for harm, God used for good. I smiled through tears. Curtis told me the DA would pursue full charges, attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Ellie's lawyer was already begging for a plea deal. But the judge had seen too many like her. Too many wolves in pearls. They wanted her off the streets. I didn't argue, but I did ask for one thing, that she be required to get counseling. Because while I couldn't forgive her, not yet, I also couldn't stop hoping. Hoping that somewhere, buried deep inside that broken woman, was still a little girl with scraped knees and tearful eyes who once asked me, "Will I be a good woman someday, Mama?" I used to say yes. Now, I didn't know. But I did know this. I would not let her destroy me. I would not let the world see me as a victim. I was Geneva Rourke. A wife. A mother. A woman of grit and grace. And I had survived my own daughter's hatred. That made me stronger than I'd ever imagined. And far from done. Weeks passed. The days grew longer, the lavender bloomed brighter, and the sound of Dorothy's wind chimes became a part of my healing. But no matter how warm the sun was or how many cinnamon cookies the ladies baked, I couldn't shake the shadow that followed me. Because it wasn't just about Ellie anymore. It was about me. About how I had silenced myself for years. About how I had overlooked the warning signs because I didn't want to believe my own daughter was capable of cruelty. And how I had spent my life giving, never once preparing for the moment I'd have to protect myself from the person I loved most. Curtis came by often, always with updates. "She's trying to reach out," he said one morning, sliding a folded note across the table. "Wants to talk. Says it's important." I didn't touch it. What could she possibly say now? I asked quietly. Curtis sighed. "People like Ellie, when the consequences hit, they suddenly remember who you are." "I haven't forgotten who she is," I said. "That's the difference." But later that night, when the house was quiet, I opened the note anyway. It wasn't long. "Mom, I messed up. I got scared. I felt like everything was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I'm still your daughter. I'll always be your daughter. Please write me back. Ellie." The words sat heavy in my lap. I read the letter 5 times before I finally folded it and tucked it inside my Bible, somewhere between Psalms and Proverbs. I didn't have the heart to throw it away. But I also didn't have the heart to respond. She may always be my daughter. But I would never be the same mother. A week later, I got a call from my lawyer. "The trial's moving forward," he said. "The state wants your testimony. You're the key witness." I hesitated.
Will I have to see her?
Yes. That night, I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. My skin sagged in places it never used to. My hands, once so strong, trembled when I tried to button my blouse. But my eyes were clear. And I made a choice. "I'll testify," I told him the next day. "But I won't do it out of revenge. I'll do it so no one ever calls her innocent again." The courtroom was cold. Sterile. A place where truth had to wear a suit and speak through microphones. I walked in slowly, supported by Dorothy's arm on one side and Curtis on the other. Reporters buzzed like flies in the hallway. Ellie sat at the defense table. Her hair pulled back. No makeup. Eyes sunken, like she hadn't slept in weeks. She looked up when I entered, and for a split second, I saw something that tore me apart. Regret. Maybe real, maybe rehearsed. But it was there. When they called me to the stand, the room hushed. I told the truth. About the will. About the man who broke into my home. About the photo on Martha's porch. About the pain of seeing your own child become your predator. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just told them everything. And when they asked me why I hadn't gone to the police right away, I looked at the jury and said, "Because I wanted to believe it wasn't real. That my daughter still had good in her. But when someone tries to kill you with a smile, it's no longer about love. It's about survival. Ellie never looked away. Not once. After court recessed for the day, her lawyer approached me. He was young, maybe 30. Nervous. She'd like to speak with you, he said. Privately. No tricks. No cameras. Just closure. I agreed. They brought her to a quiet room behind the courthouse. We sat across from each other, like two women waiting on a bus that never came. I didn't think you'd come, she said. I wasn't sure I would, I answered. She leaned forward, eyes watery. I didn't know how to stop. Once I started, it just kept growing. The lies. The anger.
I thought you loved Dad more than me.
My throat tightened. I loved you both. But you wanted to be loved like property. That's not love, Ellie. That's ownership. She wiped her face. Do you hate me? I paused. No, I said. But I don't trust you.
And I don't know if I ever will.
She nodded like she already knew. And maybe she did. The guards led her away a few minutes later.
I stood in that room alone, holding the ghost of what could have been.
But I didn't cry, because some tears I'd already wept long ago. That night, back at Dorothy's, I opened the real will. Franklin's signature stared up at me from the bottom of the final page. To my beloved wife Geneva, I leave it all, with trust that she'll pass it on when the time is right, to the person who deserves it most. That line echoed in my chest like a church bell. And I knew, finally, what I needed to do next. Not just survive, but choose what kind of legacy I would leave behind. The days after the trial felt strangely quiet. No cameras, no court summons, no lawyers, no shadow of Ellie's footsteps creeping around corners. Just silence. But it wasn't peace. Not yet. Peace is something you build, not something you're handed. And I had spent too long patching holes and stitching over wounds that had never healed properly. Now it was time to tear down what was rotten and start again. The first thing I did was return home. Curtis insisted on going with me. Dorothy came too, with a basket of warm cornbread and a bottle of apple cider she called a welcome home potion. The moment I stepped onto that porch, my knees almost gave out. Everything was just as I'd left it. The rocker still creaked in the wind. The rose bush I planted 20 years ago bloomed like it didn't know the house had once been a crime scene. Even the welcome mat was still crooked, just like Franklin hated it. But it felt different, like the walls had watched the betrayal, held their breath when that man crept through the window. Curtis checked every room while I just stood there, listening, remembering, feeling. I want to renovate, I told him. Start fresh. Maybe turn the place into something more than just mine. He looked at me. Like what? A home for women like me. Widows. Older women with no family. Or worse, family that wants them gone. Dorothy's eyes lit up. You'd be perfect for that, Geneva. You are that. I nodded, heart pounding. I don't want to just live out my days hiding. I want to do something with what I've been through. Curtis offered to help with the paperwork. Dorothy connected me to a non-profit consultant who specialized in retirement community grants. Within a week, we were forming the foundation, the Rourke House, a safe haven for women over 60 who needed healing, shelter, or just a reason to keep waking up in the morning. And something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a builder again, like Franklin was whispering in my ear, "That's my girl." But life has a funny way of testing your resolve. One afternoon, as I was sorting through boxes in the attic, I found an old tin with Ellie's childhood treasures, her baby bracelet, a crayon drawing of me and her under a sun with a smiling face, and a letter she'd written at 10 years old. Dear Mama, I love you even if you are old. When I get rich, I'll buy you a big house with chocolate walls. You'll never be sad. Love, Ellie. I sat down on the attic floor and wept, because even after everything, there was still a sliver of her I missed. That little girl was gone. But I had to accept it. Grieve her. Bury her with the memories, not with hate. Ellie was sentenced to 12 years. No parole for the first 5. I chose not to attend sentencing. I'd already said my piece. The judge called her actions a cruel manipulation of maternal trust. Her lawyer tried to argue mental stress, but the jury had heard enough.
And so had I.
Weeks later, I got another letter from Ellie. This one longer, less defensive. I'm sitting in this gray cell thinking about the sound of your laugh when you used to make cornbread with vanilla instead of butter. I remember your hands, always warm even when mine were cold. I remember when I was good, Mama. I remember before I broke myself. I don't ask for your money or your forgiveness. I just hope, someday, you can remember me the way I remember you. I didn't write back. Not because I didn't care, but because some words are best spoken through action. Instead, I added a line to the mission of the Rourke House. We are not just survivors. We are the architects of our second chance. And every woman who walked through my doors carried their own brokenness. Some cried on the porch before even stepping in. Some just nodded quietly, carrying plastic grocery bags stuffed with memories. Some told stories of husbands who took everything, children who vanished, or brothers who changed the locks. I welcomed them all. And in their faces, I found pieces of myself. It was messy. It was hard. It was holy. One night, I sat by the fireplace with Martha and Dorothy, sipping tea and listening to the wind. You did it, Geneva, Martha whispered.
You turned ashes into shelter.
Dorothy smiled. You took the dagger your daughter threw and carved a door with it. I looked out the window at the moonlight on the lawn. I'm not done yet, I said, because I wasn't. This wasn't a story of an old woman who got hurt and limped off quietly into the dark. This was a story of a woman who lit a torch with her pain and lit the way for others to follow. The day the Rourke House officially opened its doors, the sky was painted with soft orange clouds and a breeze that smelled like renewal. We had 13 women staying with us already. Each had their own story. One had fled a son who locked her in a back room when his wife moved in. Another had been evicted from her trailer park when her pension check was stolen by her granddaughter. And one woman, Mabel, nearly 90, simply said, I woke up one day, and no one remembered my name. But here they were seen, heard, loved. And in their faces, I found the strength to finish the final chapter of my own story. I stood on the porch that morning, holding a little card in my hand.
I had written it the night before, in the quietest hour, with shaking fingers.
It was addressed to Ellie. Dear Ellie, I've thought of 1,000 things to say to you. But today, I will say just one. I remember the good in you. Not to erase what you've done, but to remind myself of the seed that once grew inside you. If one day you decide to water it, to choose better, to rise instead of ruin, know that there's a place in this world that believes healing is possible. Not guaranteed, not owed, but possible. I won't wait for you, but I won't hate you either. That's the gift I give myself. Mom, I didn't mail it, but writing it made something shift. That afternoon, a young woman named Lacey arrived at the Rourke House with bruises on her arms and tears she wouldn't explain. She clutched a single plastic bag filled with mismatched clothes and a photo of her mother, long dead. Can I stay? She asked. I nodded and took her hand.
You already are.
We helped her settle in. That night, around the fireplace, she asked me, how do you forgive someone who meant to destroy you? I stared into the flames and said the truth. You don't do it all at once. You do it like laundry. in cycles. Some days you soak. Some days you rinse. Some days you just let it sit. But one day, you look down and realize, the stain doesn't own you anymore. Lacey smiled through tears. That's beautiful. I smiled back. That's survival. A month passed. Then two. And one crisp morning, I got a letter with no return address. I nearly threw it out until I saw the handwriting, uneven, familiar. Inside was a sketch of me, holding Ellie in my lap. It was drawn from memory, shaky but full of something I hadn't seen in her in a long time. Care. No words. Just that picture. I pinned it to the corkboard in my kitchen and whispered, maybe that seed is waking up after all. But I didn't dwell on it. There were breakfasts to make, beds to turn down, a vegetable garden that needed weeding, and new women arriving every week, each carrying suitcases full of pain and possibility. And I walked with a cane now. My knees complained in the morning. My hands weren't as steady. But my heart was steel wrapped in softness. The world had tried to break me. My own daughter had tried to erase me. But I was still here, breathing, building, becoming. On the anniversary of Franklin's passing, I lit a candle and sat by the window, whispering into the dark. I kept your promise, love. I gave it all to someone who deserved it. And in that moment, I didn't feel old. I didn't feel broken. I felt eternal. Because love like ours doesn't die. It transforms. Into shelter. Into second chances. Into a house filled with voices and laughter and fresh-baked cornbread. Into the Rourke house, where forgotten women remember who they are. And I, Geneva Rourke, am more than what was done to me. I am what I chose to do next. If this story moved you, if you believe in the strength of quiet women and second chances, please like, comment, and subscribe, because someone out there needs to hear this. And their next chapter might begin with you. 3 years later. The lavender around the Rourke house grew wild now, stretching like soft purple fingers toward the sky. The rocking chairs on the front porch never sat empty, and the kitchen smelled constantly of cinnamon, garlic, and stories. We had expanded, twice. What began as a home for 13 became a village for over 40. We had women who once ran libraries, taught music, managed farms, raised 5 children, or survived things no one should. And here, they weren't burdens. They were beacons. And me. I was 85 now. Still rising at dawn. Still watching the dew glisten over the yard. Still remembering to hold both pain and grace in the same palm. One morning, as I was walking past the community garden, a young girl waved at me from the edge of the property. She couldn't have been older than 16. Thin. Nervous. Holding a manila envelope like her life was inside it. "Are you Mrs. Geneva?" she asked. I paused. "I am." She looked around, then stepped closer. "My mom asked me to find you." "Your mom?" She nodded. "Ellie." The name still hit like a dropped plate, but softer now. Less shattering. More familiar. "She's in a women's prison in the north. She teaches painting now. Said you'd understand." I swallowed. The girl, thin like Ellie used to be, held out the envelope. She said she's sorry. That she knows she can't fix it. But she also said you'd want to know, she's changing. I took the envelope. My hands didn't shake. Inside was a journal. Pages and pages of handwritten confessions, drawings, prayers, letters. No manipulation. No excuses. Just truth. And that's what I always wanted. Truth. The girl, her name was Joy, asked if she could volunteer here. Said she wanted to see what her mother couldn't. We took her in. Taught her how to make beds, soothe nightmares, and plant squash that didn't die on the second day. And one afternoon, while she helped me slice apples for a pie, she looked up and asked, "Do you think people can ever really be good again after they've done something awful?" I thought about it, then smiled. I don't know if we ever stop being good. I think we just forget. And sometimes it takes a long, hard journey to remember again. Joy nodded slowly. And we kept slicing. The pie would feed 20 women who once thought they'd die forgotten. But now, they sat around a table filled with light, laughter, and the music of second chances. And I was no longer waiting to be remembered, because I had built the place where remembering began. I was Geneva Rourke, daughter, wife, mother, survivor, founder. And this was my legacy. Not the will, not the house, not the name, but the love I left in every corner of this world. Speech balloon. If this story touched your heart, showed you the power of quiet strength, or reminded you that it's never too late to rewrite your ending, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your story matters too.